Welcome back, everyone, and welcome new people. So we've called this section, Could It Really Be That Simple? So we've kind of been speaking to that a bit this morning. We had Elsie speak at our last retreat, and she was the last speaker of the 3 days. And I really heard afresh when she was speaking the simplicity in the principles. And somebody bravely had asked a question and talked a little bit about what was going on for them and how kindly Elsie responded, but also how sure she is in the message. And one of the things she'd said was, well, do you want to live in your anxiety or do you want to live in your well-being? And it was such a simple, well, but where do you want to live? And you could kind of hear choice in it. And she wasn't saying it in an unkind way. And she'd shared her own experience of when she had COVID, and that she kind of got, her mind was so busy, she kind of got lost in it for a bit. But she said when she started to settle down, she sees the choice in, do I want to live in this feeling or do I want to live in this feeling? And she chooses to live in her well-being more often. She sees what serves her more often. She allows herself to get over things and move on from things more often. And I said to you afterwards, it was such a beautiful reminder of the simplicity of the principles, because there's just so many fantastic speakers now. There's so many courses and talks and books, and it's amazing. And you can see everyone interprets the message in their own way, and then they share from that. And that's exactly what Sid wanted people to do. He didn't want little mini Sid clones, because no one could have his insight. But then I think I really enjoyed listening to Elsie, because I think she is someone who, she spent her life with Sid up until his passing, and she knew him before his experience, and she honored his message. She had her own friendship with him and she loved him as a person, but what she honored was his message, and it was a message of simplicity. It was a message of unity. And I saw for myself how easy it is to kind of get into the content with people, especially when what someone's bringing to you sounds or feels like, wow, you can see they're really struggling and they've been through something very difficult. And you sort of, your mind can start going, how would I deal with that? Oh my goodness, that is terrible. And it's so easy to want to jump in with people into the content, because life is messy, stuff happens. But it was such a beautiful talk that she gave, because it was just, but where do you want to live now? In this moment? Do you want to live in the memory of that? Or do you want to be here now? Do you want to live in anxiety? Or do you want to live in presence? And it was such a clear cut thing for her. And it's something that's then come to mind a lot over the last few months since that retreat of, wow, yeah, it is so simple. But sometimes my stories, I think you used the word mesmerizing earlier. Our stories are so mesmerizing. Our realities are so colourful. We study them, we look at them, we buy into them. And I think when we then get the opportunity to step back or gain perspective or hold it lighter, we learn. And I think she also spoke of how much learning is in those times where we do seem to feel lost. We do seem to go through times where we're struggling, and that we can learn and grow from that. And that's the respect for life, the respect for the deeper intelligence, that it's not always going to show up how we want it to or how we think it should, but a respect for, in the same way nature knows the seasons, like it knows what to do, the plants know what to do, that we are that nature, that we know what to do. We know how to go through the winters of lives and the springs and the summers and the autumns. Like, it's innate to us. And what it is when we have an idea of how life should look and it doesn't show up like that, we suffer that experience. We suffer the judgment if it should be different than what it is. And we lose respect then for that deeper intelligence, divine intelligence.
We lose respect for other possibilities as well.
Yeah. And at the same time, we can notice and realize the impermanence of all experience. And that even within those times, like when you said you had depression, but when you're watching funny movies, you would just be laughing and present with the movie, like to start to notice that too. That I know when I've experienced grief in my life, there was moments over that time where it would fall off my mind and I'd just be happy or enjoying something or with my nieces and nephews and laughing. And then I'd suddenly remember that I was supposed to be sad. But you see the impermanence of experience and the impermanence of feeling, and a deeper respect for life starts to happen, not just for yourself. And then you then bring that space to others. You get to be with them when they're in the weather of their own mind, when it's turbulent and difficult and they've lost sight of who they are. But you get to still see them, their nature, their perfection, their wholeness, when they can't see it for themselves. And I know that that for me was one of the biggest things with Roger Mills as my first teacher, is that he saw my wholeness despite all of my stories and ideas and sort of problems that I thought were huge and completely insurmountable. He knew that I was all right. I was lost in story. And he didn't disrespect my story. He didn't belittle it, but he just kept speaking to wholeness. And when we see this for ourselves, we can't help but see it in others. And sometimes it's easier to see in other people. Like you see when they're getting, like you'll see if I'm getting stressed about being late for something and I'm tripping over and knocking into things and we end up taking longer to leave the house. But I don't see it in those moments. It's urgent and I need to get out of the house, and it's easy for you to see. And then I can sometimes have a different perspective if you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed, but you start to see what's below or before what's showing up in form. And sometimes with this conversation, people will think that we're dissing the intellect or dissing the form, or it's all part of the same play. It's all necessary. But I think we have kind of forgotten to value the invisible aspect of ourselves. And we've just got very, very caught up on what's visible for us. And the invisible stuff, I can see why we've kind of ignored that, because you can't see it with the eyes. And we're so used to being able to see things with the eyes and figure things out. But the invisible part of us, our spirit, our soul, our nature, whatever we want to call it, is where all things come from. And that nature is where we are the same. So the simplicity is that we will get caught up in our own minds. We will get caught up and mesmerized by the reality that's being created through us. But we also, at any point, can step out and have perspective and gain perspective and learn and grow from any of it. And I used to kind of feel like, well, I've been caught up this long and I've gone down this road this far. I don't want to back down now. And the realization of I can actually come out of this now. I don't have to hold on to it because I've gone down this road so far. And you often say, you know, with the mind, it's not like if you travel 20 miles out on a hike in the wrong direction, you're going to have to do that 20 miles back. With the mind, it doesn't work like that. It's instant. You can go from feeling the worst you've ever felt to the best you've ever felt in an instant.
Can I bring something, the difference between like psychology and what Sid brought in at that point. Because in psychology, it's very much like you are, experience is a physical thing. You know, I was told by a psychologist, well, the general rule of thumb is it takes as long for you to get over something as what it was that you were in it. That's what I was actually told by a psychologist. We treat experience or reality as though it's some kind of bound event. It's bound, like you were saying, like distance is bound by distance. It's like if you walk 20 miles in the wrong direction, you are bound by that fact. So you will have to walk 20 miles back if you want to get back to where you started. You're bound. It's bound by time and it's bound by distance. And that was how mainstream psychology treated me. Again, I'm not dissing the people. I perhaps am questioning the methods, the ideas, the ideas behind psychology, which still has a mainstream hold. I am questioning those. The people were beautiful. But we must start to wake up and realize the mind is not bound by time and distance. The mind only ever exists now. It's within the mind that time and distance exists. The mind does not exist within time and distance. Time and distance exist within the mind. The mind is free to go from 20 years ago to a harrowing time 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 30 seconds ago. In a moment. It's free to travel to a projected future of 10 years' time, 5 years' time, 2 years' time, 10 minutes' time, a minute's time in a moment. It can also go from that 20 years ago, which we just gone and visited, back to the moment now. It's not bound by time. The mind is the time traveler. If people want to learn how to time travel, learn how to use the mind. Everybody's a time traveler. We time travel all the time. Much of the time we're not aware we're doing it, and this is where our suffering is created. All suffering is created in time. Time's an illusion.
That's right. And I think that's not to say that things haven't happened. Again, like I feel like every single teacher I've ever come across in the principles respects and honors people's experience and the hard times that they've gone through. But to know that even our past can change within our mind. Something that we've thought about the same way for 10, 20, 30 years, a story that we've held on to can suddenly look very, very different to us given new thought. And I think we can often say, no, well, we can't change the past. But the thing is that the past can look different through new thinking, through insight, through understanding. And that's the incredible thing, like becoming present in the moment with what's true. You suddenly get new insight and information and knowledge that can then wipe out something that's happened in the past that's held us. I know just from very small things within my own life, when I saw the truth of this for myself and then realized it was true for others, so much of my judgment and my blame and my anger about things that had happened in my life fell away naturally. And something that I know Dr. Roger Mills was very, very keen to speak about was psychological innocence, is what he termed it. Because he did a lot of work within communities, the homeless shelters in LA. He did work all over the place, but he really wanted people to realize psychological innocence, what he called psychological innocence. That given the thinking somebody is in, they do what they do. If they could do better, they would do better. And that to me really kind of shook the ground I stood on, because I had held on to so many grudges before learning about this. Why did they do that? They must be that kind of person if they did that. I didn't see the momentary nature of thought. I didn't see how when something's brought to life through thought, you just act out of it without question if you don't know to question it. And when we start to see that, we get to live in the lived experience of less judgment. We get to have the lived experience of more compassion. And all of these things were good ideas to me before the principles. Don't be judgmental, be more compassionate, have gratitude. And I try and go about doing those things. But those things aren't something that we do. They're something that naturally arises within us when our judgmental thinking falls away. And like I said earlier, it's not that I don't get judgmental. Like I do, I get caught out by this. But, and we've spoken about this in terms of our relationship, the difference is I know that my reality has everything to do with my mind and nothing to do with outside. So I take responsibility for my own experience. And that is huge, because we talk about it with kids, and I think it's from the iHeart program, almost like you're a puppet on a string and you're handing out strings to different people. That's how I used to feel. Like different people were controlling me, different people were giving me feelings. And then you come across this and you're like, wow, my lived experience comes from within me, which is how it's so different to other people. It's unique. But the way that it's created, the source from which it comes, is the same. So we can respect and embrace the diversity and uniqueness within people, but then also know that there's a place in us that's the same. And I know that when I'm caught up and a reality looks real for me, that's all I see. And I'm very grateful for the dark thinking that I seem to have, and the moods that I seem to have haven't then led me down a path that ends me in prison. Or like, hopefully Linda will tell some of the stories of people she's worked with. I think she's speaking Monday afternoon. But one of the ones that she told of working with one of the kids who did the school shootings in America. And she was working with him and teaching him about the principles. And he said to her, I wish I'd known this before. He said, because when I was walking down the corridor, I had my hand in my bag on the gun. And there was this voice in my head saying, you don't have to do this. You don't have to do this. He said, but I didn't know to trust that. So I did this and now I'm here. And I think the other thing that was incredible about when Linda's told this story is how much love she had for that kid and how much compassion she had. Because you see that we all make mistakes. We all get caught out. But she saw his innocence, not in his actions, but in him. And that not only frees us, but it also, people feel that from us. When we can see them despite their history or despite what they've done. But we're so used to meeting people's characters and judging them on it and weighing them up. But when we can see beyond that, beyond the character that's created, like I remember you talking about when you went from a very small, safe primary school to a big secondary school, you saw the big boys, you wanted to be a big boy, and you took on this persona, this character, and then you forgot. And you became this hard man, and it was born of insecurity. And some of the times you've talked about things that have happened at schools, like, so you were a bit of a bully sometimes. You're like, yeah, I was. But then you had understanding and compassion for the bullies in the school that we worked in. Like, they're not secure human beings if they're doing that kind of behavior. You start to see what comes before behavior. And when we get to that place, it's a level playing field again.
You see that all our suffering is created from insecurities. You know, nobody goes to see a psychologist and says, do you know what, I've got a bit of a problem. What's that? I'm just fucking happy all the time. I am seriously mentally happy. I suffer from happiness. We don't do that. We go because we're insecure. I get why I was insecure. I get why I was a hard man. You know, another thing we tend to do, you see it an awful lot in schools, working with challenging behavior. You can't work with behavior. Behavior is the end result of a process. I often liken trying to work with behavior is like building a house, but starting with a roof. It's illogical. But no, the roof's the bit that keeps you dry. We need that first. We need the roof because if we got the roof up, then we can put the walls up in the dry and the foundation. We dig the foundations as well in the dry. Let's get the roof up first. How are we going to do that? Oh, no, we can't. That doesn't work. We need to go before the roof. Okay, so what have we got before the roof? Well, first of all, we need some walls to hold the roof up. Yeah, we need some walls. Okay. What are we going to... We need some foundations, though. Okay, let's get foundations. Let's start foundationally. You know, so much of the time we spend an awful lot of time in our social systems, schools and whatever, businesses and stuff, work, and trying to work on people's behavior without any respect for the walls and the foundations of it, of the roof of behavior. First things first, we need foundations to hold the walls up. Then we can start to build the roof. Get some good solid foundations. Foundations, well, that's thought. The walls, they're your emotions, they're your feelings. They prop up your behavior. How we think creates how we experience and feel emotionally, which in turn creates behavior. I know that when I was feeling in a really beautiful space of kindness, I wasn't very likely to go and bully somebody or punch somebody. But when I was pissed off, I also wasn't very likely to go and give somebody a nice big hug and do a kind act. We're always looking at the behavior, the bullying, the whatever, without taking into account, well, there is a fundamental behind it all. Why are we not addressing that? Let's look at that. You know, any behavior that people show up to us with, whether it's an addiction or something like that, addiction's been treated like an illness. It's treated as a disease. It was only brought about being a disease because then it could be treated under American insurance. Because American insurance would only treat diseases, but addiction wasn't a disease, so it had to then start to get the classification of a disease so it could be treated for on insurance in America. That's how addiction became a disease. It was never a disease. It isn't a disease. It's habitual thought. Controversial statement. I know. But we really have seen enough people come to us now who have been struggling with addiction, who've been trying to work with it, who then have started to wake up and realize it is thought. Everything that we do is everything we've ever created as a society, as a culture, as an individual, you know, all our technological advances, all our capacities for creating these amazing new innovations, it all starts with thought. Everything starts with thought. Everything starts with thought. Everything is thought. Thought is the creative substance from which we then manipulate our material world and the people around us and ourselves. We mold. We use it to figure things out. We also use it to create problems. You know, it really is a tempting thing for us when we come to this to think that this is another way to work on ourselves. I really, really, really want people to start to gain a sense of you don't need to work on yourself anymore. Nobody does. We don't need to work on ourselves. Every single time we set to trying to work on ourselves, we're actually working on the ego. It's the ego who perceives a problem, and it's the ego who thinks that it needs to work on itself. Because the truest self, the truest nature of self, the center, the heart, space, the source, there is not a single problem in there. Life and death are exactly the same thing to it. It creates life and death. It is life and death. It's beyond this physical form which we associate as ourself, and therefore when it's time for us to depart this planet, we assume that we die, and because the body ceases and the people around it who are still in physical form stop and look at this physical body and go, oh, there's nobody there, they assume that they've literally just vanished into, there's nothing left of them. No, it's just the body. It's quite interesting at that point how we don't put two and two together and go, hold on, there was actually a massive distinction between this now motionless body where we say, oh, the individual's not there anymore, but the body's still there, and a time gone by when they were present in the body. It's quite interesting how we don't kind of see the distinction. There must be something living the body. There must be something enlivening the body that departs. We take life so much for granted that we don't question it. A questioning mind is a beautiful mind. A mind that asks big questions gets big answers. A mind that asks superficial questions gets superficial answers. Everybody's mind is capable of both. There is no greater mind on this planet than our very own. Our very own mind is capable of dreaming all kinds of things, realizing all kinds of things. We're more powerful than anything we can even comprehend because we don't know ourselves. There's one of the first sayings in the lost chapters of Thomas, the book of Thomas, words written down of a man called Yeshua, which people often hear me quote. Yeshua was the Aramaic name of Jesus. And Thomas was a man, he was a scribe, and he literally wrote down what Jesus said. And the book of Thomas hasn't got any kind of stories, it's just sayings and quotes. It's all it is, questions and answers, as he gave talks. One of the first things that in the book of Thomas, I think it's number 1, it says, but if you do not know yourself, you dwell in poverty. But it is you that are that poverty. That's what Sid's message was about. It was about start to know yourself. Not yourself, the ego, not yourself, your history, your story, your profession, your sexuality, your race, creed, religion, ethnicity, whatever. None of that. Not your belief system, what football team you support, or anything like that. What your hobbies are. It was get to know yourself. Get to know yourself. If you can start to find yourself, the rest will fall into place because you will see its nature. The thing that has the tightest hold around our neck, the thing that cripples us the most, you'll start to see its nature. And it's like shining light into the darkness. As soon as you illuminate the darkness, darkness vanishes. As soon as you start to become aware, because that's all Sid was talking about, was awareness. That's all Buddhism, Hinduism is ever talking about. It's talking about awareness. And one of the beautiful things that Sid's message does for people is they start to have insight that changes their lives, because all of a sudden they start to have illumination on the darkness of their life. They start to see the habitual thinking that they live out of, and it is a revelation to them when they start to discover it. Fucking hell, I I've actually lived my life believing this about myself and I didn't know. Sometimes people actually remember the time they adopted that belief, and they, like myself at secondary school, going into secondary school and seeing all the big boys and going, I wish I was like you. You seem really confident. And then up until the age of 33, made it my mission to be the biggest man I possibly could and be as confident as I could. Can be confident. What do confident people look like? Well, they're the people at the top of the pyramid. They're the big hard men. I'm going to be one of them. Born of complete and utter insecurity because I didn't know myself. The moment I found myself, I realized myself isn't something that the ego can dream up. The self is far beyond anything the ego can understand. The intellect. The intellect can't understand source. The intellect's always after the fact. As we start to unveil ourselves, ourself is real. It's a real state. It's a realness. It's real. Our true self is more real than anything we've ever encountered in our earthbound existence. It's a fact. It's an actual living fact. It's not some hypothetical nice idea, or let's talk about our real self, but deep down, I am this kind of fucking character. This is who I am. No, it's not some nice new age idea. It's a fact, a true fact, the only fact. The rest of it's made up. Who we think we are, we made that up. Perhaps somebody else made it up and we believed it. Perhaps somebody told us at school, you're like this, you're the sensitive person. This is how you're a sensitive person. You're an empath. You're a this, you're a that. Oh, well, that's why I feel like I do, because I'm an empath. No, that's all in the realms of made up. That's not to say that we don't interact on a subconscious level. But what I'm saying is whatever we identify with as our character, as our ego, is made up. I'm not good enough, made up. I should be, made up. I'm not capable, made up. That's not possible, made up. It's not a fact. What we are is a fact. The fact of life. Life is a fact. We are here now living fact. Fact. Living life. Source. Living through us right now. Source of life. Life itself is source. Life itself is source. Consciousness. Awareness. With the capacity to dream. Dream realities. Both in day and night. Both are as real as one another. The dream state of nighttime appears as real as the dream state of daytime. When you're in a dream at nighttime, you don't question it. It's just real. Your body doesn't know the difference between a dream of daytime and a dream of nighttime. When I say a dream of daytime, I don't mean daydreaming. I mean now, this reality. Whatever your experience is now is being dreamt through consciousness. The body doesn't know the difference between awake state and sleep state. The body will respond to an awake state dream of being chased by a real person in real time and in awake state. It will respond the same to a dream of being chased. You will release your adrenaline and your cortisol, and you'll get sweaty and your heart will pound. And then you'll wake up and you'll realize, oh, it was a dream. That's what happens to people who start to find themselves. They wake up. Why do we call it awakening? Why do we call it waking up? Well, first of all, we must have been asleep. Dreaming and not realizing we were dreaming. Creating and not realizing we were creating. Everybody will awaken. Everybody will have the realization that they are the creative force, because it's the only thing that actually exists. Whatever the world is showing up like now is showing up because of the collective nature of consciousness of people and other beings on this planet. Our mind, our behavior, our capacity is far deeper than anything we truly understand yet. But the fact that we're having this conversation is a beginning. It's a beginning of starting to gain a respect for a depth of life that is invisible to the senses, to our everyday sensory experience. It sounds hippie, it sounds out there. It's out there. It really is to our intellect. It is totally out there. It is to our sciences. It's totally out there. But it's real. We've been living in the dark ages. Call ourselves Homo sapien, wise man, and we've been living in the dark ages of what we truly are and who we truly are. We haven't been wise. We've been destructive and stupid, ignorant. But that's born. It's born of consciousness, and it couldn't be any different. The world cannot be anything other than what it is right now. It's impossible. Couldn't be anything different. And neither could we. Given the way we have thought up until this very present moment, what we've believed, couldn't be any different. But that doesn't mean we have to be the same person into the future. That's the thing about the person, the persona, the personal. It's always up for grabs. And this is where we play. We play in this persona. We play in the character. We are a character in the play of life. A life we take really seriously. A character we take really seriously. In a life that we take really seriously without even knowing what life is. But we're going to take it seriously. We're going to take it all seriously. Life, birth, and death, we're going to take it all seriously. We're going to take one another seriously. We're going to take words seriously. Feelings, we're going to take them seriously. But what if it was never serious? What if it truly all was a game? A participatory, is it even a word? Game. Just a question. What if it was? What if it wasn't all serious? It's just a question. What if all the things we take so seriously are thoughts, beliefs, ideas?
My thought just then, did I press record? It was, I couldn't see it in the top left hand corner, but I literally got that like jolt, and then yeah, no, it is recording. It's all right.
Yeah, hold on. It's 12:30.
25 past.
Oh, is it? All right. My watch is faster. But I think it's beautiful. It's beautiful when we start to take our finger off the serious button, the serious setting. It's beautiful when we start to go into our system settings and untoggle that little thing that you slide across that goes serious. Switch it off.
I think that's what I used to love about hanging out. I think my sister's on, so I don't know if the kids can hear, but
She'll just have a face showing.
I won't mention their names, but I always used to love looking after my sister's kids, like especially when they were really young, because they were just so quick to laugh and just giggle at the stupidest things, and you could do the same thing over and over again and they'd find it hilarious. And I think in so many ways I came across the principles when my sister was pregnant and then Lewin was born, and I often say like the principles kind of woke me up to more. And then when I met Lewin, my niece, for the first time, the love I felt was beyond any condition. It was something I hadn't experienced before. But I think I learned so much from being around her, and she used to just connect with people. And I often used to look after if my sister was doing courses and things, and I'd walk around London with her on like in a sling on my front, and she'd like touch people on the tube or like wave at people and look, like stare at people. And so quickly those, like normally I was quite scared on the tube and people didn't connect, and it's London and people are like this. But so quickly all of those barriers broke down when I was with her. And then as she grew up, like she used to just laugh for no reason. And I'd be like, wow, I'm so serious. But we kind of go, yeah, but children, yeah, they're silly, and they don't have to worry about the big things, because we're the adults and what we think about is really important. But I love the playfulness of being around young children before they learn that life's serious. Like I know that we've had conversations with my niece about GCSEs and secondary school, and like it's made out that if you do badly at GCSE then your whole life's ruined. And we're like, look, we're not saying don't try, but honestly that's not true. And you can see how we quickly adopt this idea that life's very, very serious.
It's a fight.
And we have to do it. We have to do life. We have to try really hard to do life. But you can see in young children, they don't have to do life. Life's just done through them. And there's so many incredible things that we do learn and that we have discovered in humanity that are wonderful for us to take on and understand. But there's so much that we take on that is unnecessary, which colours our view of life. So we'd love it when we come back at 2:00 to hear from people. So we call it questions, observations, reflections, just because we get bored of the sound of our own voices. And we love it when people share. And I think sometimes people think what they have to share isn't relevant or isn't important or isn't profound enough or fancy enough. But it's so often when people give us feedback, like, when that person shared that story, or it's in the ordinariness of life too.
Totally.
So please, if people have things they want to share, please do. And if you really don't want to, then message it to us and we can read it out for you.
Yeah.
But people learn so much from listening to other people. And so much of these events, they're not about the speakers, it's about all of us. So we really encourage people to speak up if you can.
Cool. What time back?
2:00. 2:00 UK time.
2:00 UK time, which is an hour and a half in every part of the world. Right, everyone, have a lovely lunch or breakfast if you are somewhere where the sun's just rising.
Yeah, we need to see your
Or
face
tea,
later, Sharon. And
if you're in the east.
Yeah.
Tea's dinner, is it? Oh, forget it. Your evening meal. Right.